Hey everyone, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this case I'm going to be going through some of the differences between the end of the world point of view in terms of survival and preparedness and the modern survival kind of preparedness that I try to focus here at the Modern Survivalist. I've mentioned some of the aspects here and there, but never actually did a detailed video on it. So let's get started. Have a little bit of patience with me because I'm doing this with a camera in between my hands on the side of it. It's not that comfortable, but it will take a little bit longer. It's going to be one of those longer videos. I think though that you'll be taking a few things from it. So we're going to be going through some of the different aspects. So on one hand we have the end of the world as we know it and the modern survivalist. Let's get started first with location. Where you should live, where you should be, what's a good idea. If you go by people that are proponents of the end of the world kind of preparedness thing, it's going to be usually a survival retreat of some sort. Okay, it's going to be somewhere that's far away from major population centers. The theory here would be that larger population centers, bigger cities and such, will be fall into complete chaos when there's a social economic collapse or major event, and you will be much better off being as far away from large cities as possible. The problem with that is basically that it really hasn't happened that way, even in some of the most worst case scenarios that you look at, even talking about a civil war and such. Being isolated on your own hasn't ever proven to be a good idea, especially in dangerous times when being alone makes you more vulnerable rather than living in groups. Not only talking about Argentina, which is what I can relate to, I'm also talking about South Africa. When you look at what happened with the farmers over there that were being targeted, unofficially condoned by the government, these guys had to fortify their homes, their homesteads, beyond anything you could think of, having landmines in them. Even that wasn't enough, because what happens is that when everyone wants you dead, that's exactly how you're going to be ending up. There's no way in which you can fight those numbers. So it's not only impractical to take that approach, it also just doesn't work in that end of the world type of situation. An extreme case will still show that being alone is not much of a good idea. If we go by the modern survival approach to it, I would go for strategic location, choosing a location based on what would be a good idea, first of all, as of today, and in case of some of the more likely events taking place. Alright, I would definitely avoid the larger population centers, bigger cities, first of all because I honestly don't enjoy living in a multi-million population city. I lived most of my life in Buenos Aires, and really not my thing. I like something that's a little bit smaller, less people bunched together. But besides that, there's the aspect of it being of having several advantages. If you're closer to some of these cities, you will enjoy the advantage of better medical care. It's going to be closer, you will have better schools nearby and such. It's not always the case, and some smaller communities do have those, so that's basically looking at taking a look at those things and making a smart decision. The key point for me would be big enough so that it has the things that I do want to have, not so big that it has the things I'm looking to avoid, such as overpopulated places, overcrowded, problems with petty crime or more serious crime. Those are the things you're basically trying to avoid. Now, being on your own, isolated, it's really not much of a solution. One of the things that gets said a lot, and I get a lot of this, is, well, I prepare for the worst case scenario, so I'm ready for everything else. That's not the case, and as we continue going down the different points, you'll see what I'm talking about here. In terms of skills, which skills should you have? Which ones should you focus on? If you go by the end of the world type of preparedness, you will see that it's basically trying to replace everything. It's basically trying to replace everything that supposedly is not going to be available anymore by things you create yourself. So we will see that there's a focus on food production, because food is not going to be available anymore. You will have to grow your own. Carpentry, blacksmithing, it's all things that you will be doing yourself, because when the world ends, there's none of that anymore. You have to build stuff yourself. All right, that is the end of the world kind of thing. In my opinion, in my perspective, you have to look at skills that are in demand. Okay, this is one of the focuses and the main points, one of the main differences between the end of the world as we know it mindset and the modern survivalist mindset. The modern survival mindset is as of today. This works now. This works in some unlikely event. And this is still in theory, because as we said before, it really never ends up being that way. So in terms of the skills that I would be looking for, is skills that make you employable, skills that allow you to make a good income, skills that are in demand in the market. Okay, one of the skills that I've seen very much in demand in Argentina was marketing, salesman. If you are able to make sales during a time of economic hardship, that is an extremely valuable skill. That is an in-demand skill. If you're able to do that, if you're good at marketing as well, you will have employment. You will have a ways of earning an income. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being a blacksmith. I actually took blacksmithing classes. I forged my own knife. I'm able of doing so again. I could actually forge a decent enough knife that I could get a few bucks for it. And I did that because I enjoy knives. I am a knife collector. I have several of them. It's something that I do like. So it's more about a hobby, even though it is a useful skill, because it is. But you have to understand that you have limited time, limited money, limited resources. You cannot do everything. So it's important to understand what it is that you're focusing in. If you like, for example, growing your own food, all right, vegetable productions and such, that's perfectly fine. It's a great skill to have. You're gonna be enjoying fresh, healthy vegetables and whatever it is that you grow your own, making your own groceries, like we've talked about in the Marjorie Wildcraft video, her excellent DVD. But it has to start as something that you actually enjoy doing. If you think you're gonna be getting all the skills needed so as to replace absolutely everything that's going to be disappearing when the world ends, again, this extremely unlikely and probable scenario, you are losing on some of the things that you need as of today. And as of today, the market is very competitive. The job market is pretty, you have to have as many tools as you want. Another language. Can you speak a second language? I can. I'm actually doing it right now. For me, having a second language is without a doubt one of the most useful skills that I have. It basically allowed me to make a living out of that. And I know it's the same for other people, no matter if you're an economist, if you're a lawyer, if you are in construction, whatever it is that you do, if you have a second language, it's an added value that you have for your employer or for yourself in having your own business. It's one of those skills that has a real world use, especially in the United States right now. If you have Spanish as a second language, it opens a huge door of opportunities for you, given the obvious market Spanish sector that you have. Moving on, because this is going to be pretty long video. Again, sorry for my handwriting. Self-defense. In terms of self-defense, you will notice that those that are more of the end of the world type of mentality will usually have a very strong military approach to things. All right, the famous a handgun is what you use to fight your way to a rifle kind of deal. All right, because the handgun is underpowered, inaccurate, and such. So it's about that. It's about the general strategies in terms of self-defense, in terms of defense in general, and such. They will talk about how you organize your survival group for defending your retreat and such. When a group of looters, when a group of raiders or whatnot comes your way, the different military tactics you would be using so as to defend your place. That's great, but I'm more worried about Walmart, and especially about the parking lot at 6 p.m. I'm worried about your home at 8 a.m. because that's when it really happens. That's when you get hit in high crime places. These ordinary places, ordinary scenarios, is when you get attacked. In the parking lot, you get attacked by a creep, you get attacked by a potential kidnapper, by a thief, a carjacker. When leaving your house early in the morning, when leaving the kids in school, when coming back home at night after work. My friend from the gun club, he got killed coming back home from work when we're opening the door to his garage. That's when he got attacked. That's when he got killed. It wasn't in some battle involving looters and a survivalist group and whatnot. These are the things that happen in the world as of today. And as the world keeps evolving into a little bit more of a dangerous place, these are the things that are going to be becoming more common. Okay, sure, people do get killed in periods of anarchy and civil unrest. It happened recently, actually, in Argentina, just last month, when there was widespread anarchy because of the cops going on strike across the entire country. Full anarchy on the streets. What was it? 13 people dead, specifically because of the looting? Maybe more. Let's suppose it's double that. That doesn't change that every single day pretty much the same number of people get murdered in ordinary episodes of violence and crime. And even though it's not news worthy and flashy, it's still what gets you killed. The gun that you have with you 24/7 is the one that's going to be saving your life. That's going to be a handgun, not a rifle. All right, have the rifle, have the load-bearing vest, and do the training you want, but don't think that's more important than being armed at all times and having the skill so as to use that handgun when needed on ordinary situations of life. Moving on towards money. According to the end of the world theory, instead of using fiat currency paper money, you're going to be using stuff like ammo and tools. Those will become the new currency. And according to the modern survival approach to things, it is going to be cash, precious metals, and other various assets. According to the end of the world theory, you will be using ammunition, tools, and other supplies as even currency or for bartering. The idea of using ammunition, first of all, as currency is ludicrous. It makes really no sense whatsoever, especially because a currency has to have certain characteristics that ammunition does not have. It is sensible to humidity, to oils that may get into it. It may not have an expiration date, but it is sensitive to the way in which you keep it. Okay, if I have a handful of 308 shells in a pocket, oil gets in there, sweat, whatever it is, it may compromise the usefulness of that ammunition. Something that is so fragile, if you look at it from that perspective, really has no place being used as a currency, especially so when it's something that you use in critical situations. Ammunition is used in critical situations. When it gets down to it, are you going to be using a round that you don't know if it's going to be going bang for sure? Are you going to be using that for hunting? Are you going to be using that for self-defense? For all I know, if someone is foolish enough to actually accept ammunition as currency, I can reload quite a bit of ammunition with dirt. Pick a few shells, tamper a little bit with a primer and a little bit else, and I'm selling that, using that as currency. There's no way knowing if that ammunition is gonna be going bang until you put it in a gun and pull the trigger. That alone makes it not. It just destroys the possibility of being used as a currency. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have plenty of ammunition, especially for shooters, and you should have a stockpile of ammunition for your training. You should have it for a rainy day. You should have it in case prices do go up, as they continue to do so. It's not only ammunition, it's everything else, in case you didn't notice. But ammunition, of course, you need it for your firearms, because without it, they're no good. And it is true that some people have sold some of their ammo during the recent shortages for a profit and such, but it's really not a currency, and it's really not something that I would suggest anyone having in place of these. For the modern survivalist, it's going to be cash. Cash, remember, is king. Proved time and again in real world, guys, not fantasy or whatever. Proved in real world situations that when things get ugly, if you have a little bit of cash with you, especially during those first times when credit cards are not accepted. I've seen this plenty. I know it happened elsewhere many times. Cash is king. Have a bit of it. Have at least a month worth of expenses in cash. That's what we're going to be going for. Precious metals, in case cash loses its value. It can happen. Of course it can happen. If we analyze historic events, we know that Weimar Republic, in Africa, poor nations and such, in Argentina to a degree as well, it may lose some of its value. It may even lose it completely. How likely is that to happen with a leading currency like the dollar, like the euro? Not likely, especially not these days. Not very likely. Possible, but really unlikely, I would say. Finally, assets. Real estate property, land, things that, as they say in Spanish, ladrillos, comprar ladrillos, buy bricks, buying the actual bricks, the actual building. That's going to be staying in spite of a devaluation, in spite of an economic collapse. Even if things get really ugly, you will still own that piece of property. And not only are you going to be saving what you have in it, even though the value can go down quite a bit. We've seen with a housing bubble, we've seen it in other places. If you are smart though, when investing your money, the impact you will get will not be nearly as much as the kind of money you're going to be losing if you go this way. If you think that a shed full of tools is a mine of gold, in this extremely unlikely, unrealistic scenario, you will have to wait for this. Again, for the modern survivalist, this is as of right now. This works as of right now. If there's an economic crisis, a very serious downturn, you have a piece of real estate, you can put it up for rent. In general, the rent you will be getting goes up somewhat along with inflation. So if the currency starts losing value, we've seen this in Argentina as well, the currency loses value, rent goes up. It somewhat compensates for it. Okay, these are things that, at least to me, make much more sense, and it's useful as and works as of right now. The idea of barter replacing, it's going to be the new way of doing business. Not very likely, but according to the end of the world as we know it theory, it's gonna be everything is gonna be going to hell, and everyone is gonna be setting up different barter clubs or whatever, and that's gonna be replacing an actual economy. No, I mean, I've seen barter become the only way for some people to get by. And I will say, though, that barter is very limited. It has the huge problem of, first of all, you actually have to find someone that has what you are needing and is willing to take what you have to offer in exchange for it. It is very, very difficult. With some products, it's a little bit easier. Let's suppose things get really ugly, you have food, you have something that's in high demand. Food, you need food every single day, of course it's in demand. Now, is it something that's going to be replacing a real economy? No way. I've seen the boom of the barter clubs in Argentina when people were using that to get by. Even in the most prosperous period of the barter clubs, cash was still king. I could have walked into any of these barter clubs that people were using to survive, and cash would have gotten me a better deal than the guys that were bartering with actual stuff, because cash is still needed. Same thing if you had precious metals. If you had gold and you could sell gold and then do whatever it is you wanted to do in these clubs, that would have been much better than just thinking of having something to barter with later on. Barter, there's a reason why we've gone past barter so many thousands of years ago, because a currency of some form, of some sort, is always better. If you have someone that you can barter with on regular basis, a neighbor of you that has something that's willing to take something that you have in exchange, maybe in your community, some arrangements of your own, yes, but that's not a real barter economy like it was in the in caveman period of times. That's great. Put that into practice. It's a way of networking as well. But understand that in no way is barter going to be becoming the new form of doing business in this supposed scenario. Moving on towards the way you clothing and gear in general. The idea of everyone dressing in camouflage, again, very militaristic perspective of things, because it conceals better in the in the combat zone or whatever. Again, it's a military approach to a civilian problem. According to the modern survival mindset, it's a much better idea to go for a gray man approach, just being lost in the crowd, wearing colors that don't catch that much attention, that are not like creating much contrast with the surroundings, trying to go as unnoticed as possible, avoiding specifically dressing in camouflage, which looks very militaristic, avoiding gear in general that it's of a very military appeal. Now, there's people have gotten used to it to an extent. that they are okay with, maybe a backpack with Molly on it and such. Nonetheless, someone that is looking for valuable gear, especially criminals, will see that and think, okay, that nice Maxpedition pack, that looks fancy, that looks expensive, that looks as if it has good stuff in it. So just looking ordinary in general is the best way to go about it, and not sticking out like a sore thumb. In terms of security, if you are going to be ready for the kind of crime that is most likely the kind that you're going to be seeing soon enough, you have to be ready in your house, your home, as of right now, not bugging out to the bunker wherever that may be. Okay, the idea of waiting for a certain event to happen, which most likely it's, even if there are certain, take for example 9/11. 9/11 was serious enough, as you ask me. Now, would you have solved anything by throwing everything in your truck and bugging out to the cabin in the woods or whatnot with a group of people? You wouldn't have solved anything. You wouldn't have achieved anything by doing so. You have not to think of it in terms of, I'm going to be leaving my ordinary life and moving to the woods and living off the land, or start bartering with the neighbors with ammunition and whatnot. You have to think of securing your place right now, your home, wherever that may be. Doesn't matter if it's a condo in downtown district, in a suburb, or if you live out of the city. Your home itself has to be secured. It makes no sense to live in a house with a door that can be kicked down and thinking you're safer because you can throw your stuff in a car and move to a cabin somewhere else. Improve your home security, the one you live in, again, today, now. Now, guys, is, I don't want to get philosophical, but now is it's basically all you have. The idea of government, according to the end of the world perspective, there will be none anymore. The government disappears when this supposed event takes place, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Or it becomes some form of tyrannical United Nations, NATO thing that comes chasing after you. The idea, I find it to be kind of entertaining and such. Doesn't have much of a grasp in reality, though. According to the modern survival perspective, it's the same as what you have right now, only worse. Okay, that's going to be the difference. It's not that the government's going to be disappearing. Government, politicians, and lawyers, they are like cockroaches. You throw a nuclear bomb and they're the only thing that survives. All right, it's the same thing. It's going to be the same thing as right now, only worse. Means it's going to be harder to find ways to get by. You have to basically learn how to not fight the system, but find ways of making it work the best for you, for your better well-being. All right, it is a completely different approach. One is expecting the government and basically society along with it to disappear. The other one is, I'm going to be finding ways of being better off in spite of it. Okay, I'm going to be seeing if I can find anything so as to make it work for me. And instead of disappearing into the woods and parting with society, I'm going to be part of society and make the best of it. All right, that's the nutcase guy that has a problem with his neighbors, and when when they finally take him out, they ask his neighbors about him, and yeah, he was a loner. He was he didn't talk to people. No, according to the modern survival mindset, your neighbors should be the people that have the best things to say about you. You should be a freaking great neighbor. All right, your neighbors are gonna be the ones that will be helping you out when you have problems with your car, if you forgot your keys inside, any problem you had. It's gonna be the people around you that are gonna be helping you out. So you have to be a good neighbor yourself, so as to when problems come up, you can count on them as well. This takes us to networking. According to the end of the world mentality, you just get along with like-minded end of the world guys, people that have that same perspective of things. So you form a survival group, and you all think the same way, and you all think that you're all just waiting for the end of the world to happen. And when the end of the world happens, which I don't know, is maybe an email that people get, or a text message that says, yes, officially the end of the world took place right now, so feel free to bug out and start living your end of the world survivalist life. I don't know really what it is. Again, I'm still thinking of what could possibly be that ends up in this end of the world situation. You had 9/11, that didn't trigger the end of the world. You have wars in different countries. You have Syria. You have, you have so many places where there's problems right now, and the world still doesn't end. If you're in Syria right now, or if you were there a year ago, your best approach would have been to leave, to move away from it. But the world didn't end with it. You see, even if there's massive problems, the world just doesn't end. There's always going to be, when things are that bad, there's always going to be a better place to be in. Maybe you should get yourself there. So, in terms of networking, according to the end of the world mentality, you have to get along with communicate with other like-minded people, form your survival group, and when there's a end of the world event or whatnot, you go to your survival retreat and you start doing all these things. If you are more of the modern survival type of survivalist, you understand that not very likely. Instead, what you're much better off is to network with people, as of right now, that have things that you may end up needing one day. And this can be basically anyone. That's why we go back with learning to get along with anyone. You just don't know where help may be coming from one day. If you're a good neighbor yourself, if you are a good member of society yourself, and people value you and appreciate you, you will eventually find there's going to be some guys, some professions, some people that have more advantages than others. Maybe being a friend with a guy in the gun store is of use one day. I know that it was for me many times. Being pals with the guys in the gun store, they would offer me better deals and such. If anything came in rare, or maybe some rare firearm or something interesting, they would be offering it first. This is something that they told me once. We offer it to our clients first. Our clients are our smaller group of people. We offer that kind of stuff first, and then it goes out to the rest of those that come in looking for items and such. Same thing for everything else. You get along with our doctor, our pediatrician, for example. Even today, we're not even in the country anymore. If we need anything, we just send him a message, or my wife contacts him through Facebook. The guy gets back to us within maybe a couple of hours, because we developed that kind of relationship. You just never know when someone can help you out. The same way goes the other way around. You have to be as good as you can possibly be to the people around you as well. the idea of there we go, bugging out. Different conception of bugging out. According to the end of the world kind of thing, you bug out to your survival retreat, or your survival group or whatnot, when this end of the world event or whatever happens. And so we end up in a retreat. Okay, worst case scenario. And we go back to that same thing of, I'm preparing for the end of the world. So any of these petty little things you think you're covering, you're wrong. I'm covering everything because I'm preparing for the worst case scenario. So all this crap you talk about, I'm ready for it. No, you're not. You're just preparing for this unlikely thing, for this not only unlikely but fantastic scenario that is unlikely to happen, may not even happen, and it's gonna be, resolving things that just don't work that way. So you end up moving to this retreat of yours, who has to live as a part of a survivalist group in this event of some sort. I would, if you are of this type of mentality, I would ask, how is it that this worked for people in Middle East? How is it that it worked for people in Syria, for example, a country where there's 100,000 dead people? Has it worked for anyone ever when there's massive violence widespread across the country? Has anyone made it through just staying in a place, bunkering in a place, and fighting the rest of the country as it falls all over them? No, it really doesn't. It doesn't work that way. When an entire country wants you dead, the only thing you can do is get out of it. You're not going to be winning a war against thousands of odds against you. It's extremely, unlikely to happen. You have it even in the Mexican border with the drug cartel problems. People that are isolated and they declare war to the different drug lords in the region, they get killed. There's really no way around that. You're not going to be surviving bunkering in a homestead, in a bunker, in whatever it is you have in mind, while everyone else around you, or a large group around you, wants you dead, wants to kill you. They will find you, they will shoot you down, they will burn the place over you, or they will siege you until they have you. According to the modern survivalist perspective, you bug out when needed. Okay? If there's a flood and you cannot stay anymore, you leave. You move to safe ground. You seek safety. It's pretty much common sense. If you're in a house, you have your stuff, you have your possessions, your network, your neighbors, your family, why would you be leaving it because of terrorist attack, incidents? You only leave when you have to. And you may be leaving nearby, you may be leaving to a different state, you may be leaving the country completely like I did, because things get to a point of no return. In fact, right now, with more news coming from Argentina, so glad that I'm not there anymore. Very nasty things, very nasty news in terms of the economy, society in general is getting pretty bad. So if it gets to that point where you have to leave, you just do that, and you have the plans laid out to doing so. Okay, you have a bug-out bag, you have some documentation, a document bag with some of your important files and papers that you're going to be taking if you just can take one thing. But you're leaving when you have no choice, and you're leaving to safe ground. If that safe ground is in another state, so be it. If it's in another country and you really feel that's what you should be doing, then you do it. All right. Finally, and trying to wrap this up, how likely is it? How likely is this end of the world scenario and how likely is it that life will go on. There's gonna be problems, as always. There's gonna be maybe more problems than some people expect, so you are a little bit better ready for that. You are ready also for the natural man-made disasters that you know within reason, based on your location as well, that may be heading your way. That, at least to me, makes so much more sense than focusing on an unrealistic scenario with unrealistic solutions to it, that even in the worst case scenarios that we've seen throughout history, in all honesty, none of this, at least very little of this, has actually worked for someone. All right, that is my final thought on it. Guys, hope you had at least a few ideas to think about from this. Take care, remember to subscribe, and see you on the next video. Have a great day.